with the recent release of G4 mages in Call of Dragon, we now have way more options to create 5 extremely solid mage marches in the game for the open field. So in this video, I'm going to go over my 5 best mage pairings, as well as all the options you have to create mages that don't necessarily have to be the cookie cutter what we're used to seeing mage marches, because there are many options and many heroes that you might have not even thought of that you can use and do very well. Whether you're free to play, a spender, or a whale, there is so much you can do. So here we have a look at what I think are the 5 most standard and popular mage marches in the game. This is kind of what you see the most often, and it is what is kind of expected. So in pair number 1, I think the most OP merit printing mage march in the game right now, Yun-Ming, they're the new G4 mages, and they print incredible amount of merit. Now, there are many other options you can put with Yun-Ming, but I'm going to go over that in just a moment. In pair number 2, we have Liliya Villain, very standard from the beginning of the game. Has always been the highest merit printing mage march before they got replaced by the G4, but they are still an extremely solid march, and they are available from the very beginning of the game. In pair number 3 here, obviously it is not going to be what everybody agrees on, and also not possible for everybody, because I do believe you need this pair to be pretty maxed in order to be that good. But Mu Tia is, I would say, the 3rd best mage pair in the game currently, obviously using Celestials because of Tia. But this is one of the highest merit march in the game because the amount of merit you gain in the game now from supporting allies. So healing and shielding gives you a lot of merit, which makes this march very powerful. Also, they will last in the field very long, which means you will get very high merit as they keep healing and shielding, so they don't take damage, and they do damage based on their max troops almost all the time. So it's like you have a full march the whole time. You're not taking really a lot of counterattack damage. So it's a very solid pair, but it is needing a lot of work. So you do need Mu pretty much maxed. You do need Tia max to have the AoE shielding, which gives you so much merit. You need the artifact, kind of the Visions of the Sanctus, which is the flying mage artifact, which you don't need it, but it's very good and makes this march really good if you have it. And if you don't, it does take a hit. So, I mean, it's a high investment march, but it is also available from the earlier stages of the game, as opposed to Yun-Ming, who is G4, Mu is G2, and Tia is the starter hero. You can also both get them in gold keys. So this is something to keep in mind here. I'm going to offer, obviously, more option afterwards. Now, number 4, Bertrand Tohar. Now, they are also a very high investment march. They both need to be almost max. So Bertrand 5551 is very good, but Tohar needs to be max. But they're also a single target march. So they are very powerful, but their merit gain is based on hitting one target, as opposed to the first 2 pairs who do a lot of AoE. So a bit harder to gain merit, even though I still get very decent report. They're never as high as Young or Liliya when I am AoEing, so that's why they're number 4. Not that they're bad in any way, and for many people they would be in number 3. If you don't have these 2 max, Mu and Tia, you would use a max Bertrand Tohar before them, depending on what you have, of course. And in number 5, here is where it gets a bit more tricky, because there is a lot of options here. So the cookie cutter build is Tia Thundelyn. They came out together, they're G3 together, and it is a decent march, but it is really not that good compared to the other marches in terms of merit. It's always lacking behind a little bit. Also, we've seen a lot of this Mag and Zeta, which are archers, but they do pretty much as much, if not more merit than Thundelyn Tia. So a lot of the time you'll see people use Celestials with them, with mages, and me included. It is an exceptionally strong march. It works really well. You don't need marksmen. And I recently made a video about it, but also used it for a whole KVK, and it performed better than anything ever in this situation, where I used neither of these, and I used Thundelyn with Mag. You can do Mag Thundelyn or Thundelyn Mag. Now, it depends on the talents and stuff. I'm still working on that. I'm not 100% sure what's best, but Thundelyn with Mag seems to have been a little bit better in my experience. And this is another Celestial Mage March that you use because you want the Celestials for the higher base stats for Mag's damage. But in any case, both work depending on the talent build you want to use. And this has been a March that has often done more merit than Bertrand Tohar even, so, or pretty close at least. I have like 80,000 merit reports from these guys. So it's just one of those march. If you're running 4 marches and an infantry, you might cut one of these marches depending. It really depends on what you have available. But here I want to talk about what you can make in terms of alternatives. So pair number 1, Yun-Ming Grimara, very, very powerful, but you do not need Grimara. Actually, Thundelyn in second spot to Yun-Ming as a deputy is better than Grimara. It does more merit. The reason is really because she has AoE and she brings healing, makes him last longer. It just works all around better. Not that Grimara is bad in any way, but Grimara is also one of those heroes that kind of needs to be maxed because her Awaken gives an extra 15% skill damage. So if you don't have Grimara Awaken, but you have Thundelyn, and Thundelyn does not need to be maxed to really do well. Obviously, she should be because she gets a lot of power from her last and Awaken skill. But in any case, it performs slightly better. It gives double AoE March. It's just hard to beat. Other options here would be Tia. Tia works very well. Also, Yun-Ming has no rage kill, so that's why Grimara is so good with him, because her 40% skill damage buff, or I guess her 25% skill damage buff from her rage skill gets reset from a rage kill cast. Yun-Ming does not cast a rage kill, so it never gets reset. You always get the 25% buff. Tia has the same thing, a 15% skill damage buff that gets reset. If you don't have a rage kill, it doesn't get reset, so it's a permanent 15% skill damage. So these two work very well. Tia, as opposed to Grimara, offers a lot of stat as well as 20% move speed. So very, very powerful with Yun-Ming. Why it's here, obviously, is pretty self-explanatory. You do need to use Celestials. I would always use Celestial with this March because of the higher stats, and they're just, you know, the best Mage March in the game with Yun-Ming. So these are the options. Another option, Liliya. Not my favorite hero, but a very, very playable 5-5-5-1 hero. So not a huge investment for any player. And works very well. Very similar to Grimara. She's like a nerf version of Grimara in my opinion. She offers very similar stuff, but just a little bit less. So Yun-Ming with any of these 4 in this order is how I would do it in terms of best to worst, but they're all good. They all work. You also can put literally anything else like Bertrand, Liliya, Velen, whatever you want, Mu, it all works. But this, in my opinion, are the 4 best deputy for Yun-Ming, and this is one of the best, if not actually the best March in the game currently to earn merit. Now, when we pass to pair number 2, Liliya with Velen, so they are very good, self-explanatory, a double AoE, super strong. Movement speed from Velen is very, very powerful, of course, as any movement speed in this game. But there's also many options here you can do. Tia is, I would say, the number 1 option other than Velen. Liliya Tia is a pairing that people have been doing forever, and it works amazing. It's really good. Once again, I'll stop saying it now, but Celestials, if Tia's in the March, you need to use them because her buffs don't work. Otherwise, I mean, some of her buffs don't work, so you should. And if you're Mage maining, you shouldn't be Celestials anyways. So Tia and Liliya, amazing. And then it frees up Velen, who can go up here. I would say, I would put him pretty much here, I'd say, if he was going to go up here. But he also can go with literally anyone. He's an amazing mage deputy. He's not really a great main, but he's an amazing deputy to literally anyone. It doesn't really matter where you put him. Maybe not Bertrand, but I would do Thundelyn. Velen is also very popular and very powerful. Another very solid choice here, which I would even put in front of here. And actually, if you, depending on what you're doing with your Thundelyn, I would even put it here. Thundelyn, I think, is just one of the best mage deputy in the game. She provides very, very good buffs. She's one of the best mage heroes in the game, in my opinion. I would class her as number 2 after Yun-Ming because of the debuff she inflicts, which buffs the damage done by all of your marches and your allies. She also heals the march, provides a huge 30% HP boost, and does AoE damage that slows the enemy, that keeps recasting every 2 seconds. So it's just really hard to beat. She's amazing. So I mean, I'd put her here just because this is still Velen's best place to be. But in any case, you can use her and it works tremendously well. So Liliya with any of these deputies does very well. We also have Waldir. Now, Waldir, I'm putting him here because if you're a free-to-play early in the game, he's just as good as many like 5-1-1-1 legendary heroes. So 5-1-1-1 Velen or Waldir. Waldir is actually maybe even slightly better or pretty equivalent. Same as if your Tia is not awakened, Waldir is pretty equivalent because of the fact that he's purple and very easy to awaken himself. Does AoE damage, does a lot of buffs. So I mean, he's obviously the last choice in this scenario because any legendary that is close to awaken will be better. But in the beginning of the game, when you're running only a few marches, this is definitely an option to consider. And even late in the game, depending on how many heroes you have unlocked. So pair number 3, the Mutia. Again, as I said, it's a wannabe maxed kind of march. It's hard to use without being maxed, though I do use my Mutia. My Tia is maxed, but my Mu is like 5.155 or something like that. Pretty, halfway there to maxing. And it is a march that works very well with these two, but it's also such a powerful buffing support march. You can do a lot with that. You can put the Bertrand Argentis as well. It's a very good march to bring it, and it's very good to bring, of course. And then there's quite a few options you can put here with Mu. Once again, Thundelyn is one of them. One of the main reasons that I love Thundelyn here is because Mu boosts healing, and so does Thundelyn. They both have healing in their kit, and they both have healing boost in their kit. So they're just a really good combo because they heal. So if you did Mu with Thundelyn, I mean, there is a lot of skill damage. There's the debuff that Mu brings for healing, which is really good, especially now with Kuma being so powerful, and also with like Garwood now being a pretty meta in Roots of War. So I mean, it's one of those things. But also just the fact that, she's really good. Skill damage, so does Mu. They work well together. The talents are going to be less damage oriented because you don't have access to the skill talent tree, but it still works really well. So this is another option that you can bring here and works amazingly. Another one that people might forget in this is also a hero that has some sort of healing as well as some sort of damage, and a very, very powerful debuff that makes the enemy take more damage. So if you're bringing it with Mu and mages, well, you're debuffing healing and damage taken. So I mean, it's very good. She's very supportive. Like, this march is not going to do as much merit, but if you think about the debuffs you're bringing, if it was put into merit what you're giving to your alliance and your other marches, you would be probably near the top, probably even better than some of these other marches, because of how much impact it has is just not really reflected in the merit reports. Now, all that being said, of course, it really will depend what you do. Like, Thundelyn is one of the best supports to anyone. She goes well as a deputy, but if you put her with Hsiang, well, you're not going to be able to use her here. So this is why I'm giving a lot of options. It really depends on what you have. I would do, the first 2 pairings here. It's pretty much the standard, but, if you use your Thundelyn here, you won't be able to use her here, but then you would use Grimoire, which is what I do because I have a max Grimoire. So I know Thundelyn is better, but because I want to optimize all my marches, I'm still going to use Grimoire here and then have Thundelyn somewhere else, which is in this pair, but I'll show you exactly what you can do with that one. Moving on to Bertrand Tohar. Now, this is a pair that is harder to move around because Tohar also works very uniquely. He doesn't have a rage skill, but he also casts his balls of fire very often, and that is what triggers Bertrand's damage boost that he consumes on his rage skill the most efficiently. Bertrand still does it himself, and actually some of the talents and stuff now do it as well. So there's a specific way for Bertrand to really do it by himself without Tohar, but Tohar makes it more optimized and I guess more easy, and also makes you available to change talents a little bit so you're not stuck getting a talents that do damage. All that being said, it's also a very single target march, and they work really well together. But there is a few options here you can do. If you haven't used your Thundelyn by now, here is one place you can. Thundelyn, again, works really well as a deputy to Bertrand, but it's not, I would say, as good as Tohar. It's still there. It's like, if you don't have anything to do with Thundelyn, you want to bring her in anyway because of the debuff, but it's one option you can have here. Another option that I would put first, though, is Tia. Well, obviously, it's the flying march of the game if you're mages. Bertrand, Tia is a very, very powerful flying march, and they do very well with Celestials. They are kind of meant to go together. They work really well together. And Tia is going to provide a lot of buffing and shielding, as well as the skill damage, which works well with Bertrand, as well as the speed, which you want. So this is, very, very good options. Thundelyn, it's good. Like, it does work well here for sure. But in general, it's not really the option you want. Like, I would say I would use her somewhere else before here. But if you really have not used her here at all and you don't want to waste some of these heroes that you have, well, then here is a spot you can put, and she still is going to do very well. Now, coming to the last pair, you will see a lot of this. Like, this is the standard. This is something you see all the time. Maggrat Zeta with mages works really well. There is nothing wrong with that. You do need to switch the talents up a little bit. And then people will also do Zeta first, because then you get more move speed if you want to do the speed sync thing. So, this is a very decent option, and it does really well. Like, it has very similar merits to these other marches here, not the AoE marches, but still the 3, 4, 5. It's very similar. As I said, though, I have been using Thundelyn Maggrat. I have a whole video on this on my channel, so do check it out if you're interested. And it is better. this pair beats Zeta with Maggrat on a 1v1. So I mean, it's stronger. It does better in a 1v1 scenario. So if you think about these two beat these two in a 1v1, but Thundelyn has AoE. So imagine how much better it is in a AoE scenario, right? So I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory on that one. I would prefer this pair at any time. But there's also, you know, this pair, which is Thundelyn Liliya. This is the standard that we see as well. They came together, they're G3, and it does very decently. You want to kind of go for a rage build on Thundelyn to really make it work. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with this pair. It's just lacking. It doesn't perform as well. Liliya's Awaken and Last Kill are both pretty bad. The Last Kill is obviously a Garrison or a Rally one, actually. So I mean, Rally, it doesn't do anything in open field. And the Awaken just gives a very, very small shield. That's like 15% of the shield that Tia grants. Now, it gives it a bit more often, but I mean, it's really not that good, to be honest. Like, it's very small. The difference is very small. So it's why its options are being, you know, pretty limited. You want to try something else. So in this case, I would say Thundelyn with Maggrat is very, very powerful. You can also do, you know, as I said, Maggrat Thundelyn, and it works really well. Now, if you've used your Thundelyn somewhere else because it's so good, you also have many other options. Now, one option that I haven't talked about ever before. So, you know, Maggrat with Zeta or Maggrat with Bahorn. Those are two very similar builds. Bahorn's Awaken, you do kind of need the Bahorn Awakened, is crit. It gives you crit. So it works really well with a hero that does damage based on crit as well, right? So Zeta is also a crit-based hero, and Bahorn is also a crit-based kind of hero who gives like mage buffs and gives like rage and does skill damage, does AoE damage. So, I mean, I would almost be tempted if you have your Bahorn Awaken, I would put him before you use him with Zeta or use Maggrat with Zeta. This is not the hero that I would recommend awakening. It's very expensive Awaken for a very situational hero. Bahorn is not bad, but not great. He's just not as good as many of the other options. I would use Tia before Bahorn for a Flying March, but I mean, if you want to do 2 Flying March, Bahorn works really well. So it's one option that you have here, and I do believe it's slightly better than Zeta if you have him Awaken, just because he does AoE damage, and it still works even though there's no skill damage based on Maggrat. Bahorn, you can just build him as a deputy and have him do this damage, and the crit from the Awaken will really buff Maggrat. So it's something to consider. It does work well. He's a multi-hero that works with any troop type, and it works well with mage troop types when used with Maggrat. Now, another option, as I've mentioned before, Mu, is one that works really well here. And actually, I would even put it before I would use the Archer heroes because of how strong of a hero she is. As I said, the debuff and all that. She does decent skill damage, but also healing. And there's a lot of healing in the kit of Maggrat, which works really well with a hero that brings a lot of healing. Not that you really need the healing because Maggrat self-heals enough that she will trigger her skill, but the healing extra and the boost of it will be good. And also Mu's last skill is a pretty decent buff, as well as the 4th skill, which gives a lot of damage percentage buff. So works really well with Maggrat. So Mu here, if you haven't built this March or you do something else with this March here, because, you know, not everybody can build this. If your Mu's not Awakened, this is where you would use her instead. You would be using your Mu as a deputy here, and it will work really well. You can also use Mu as a deputy here and here. Like, she is a good deputy, and she does decent damage, but it's really good, I would say, when Thundelyn is in the March. So, I mean, if you did a Thundelyn March instead of a Maggrat March, like, let's say I remove Maggrat from here, a Thundelyn Mu March would work really well. So, I mean, in the last one, you know, it really is a Thundelyn March nowadays, because I would say Thundelyn primary is a bit better than Maggrat. But this is the free March, or whatever you can do, whatever you haven't used. There's so much to do here. You can also use Tia in this scenario with Thundelyn or with Maggrat even though the skill damage is wasted if used with Maggrat. All the other stats are so good for a auto attack based March. So, you know, you see this last March here is really something you can do whatever. As I said, also, we have Liliya. So if you have Thundelyn first here, well, Liliya is one of your options. If you're using Maggrat first, you know, you have all of these other options. So it really depends on what you want to do here. There's so much to do depending on what you have used or not used. But all in all, I believe these, you know, if you look at the first hero here, this is all the hero deputies that they have options. And then once you've used one, like, you know, you can't use it downward. So this is what I think is my best way of building the top 5 Mage Marches in the game currently. You obviously don't always want to run 5 marches. You do want to bring infantry, especially the new G4 infantry, because they're completely broken. And obviously, if you want to be not kicked out of your alliance because you're not using any infantry. So all in all, this is what I think in terms of the best way to build 5 marches. So in this scenario, you would have Liliya with Velen, and obviously if you are using Liliya, you need to use the Infernal Flame. It is her artifact. And then we have a Sapphire Drake, pretty straightforward. Same here, Yun-Ming Grimara, you are going to be using Dragon's Fate, and you're going to be using the Flaming Manticore, which is his pet. You have Bertrand Tohar, they also have the Orb, which is the Marriage Orb, the artifact, and the Shadow Fade Drake, which is the pet. Now here, you have Thundelyn Maggrat, very good. This is kind of what I use most of these days, and you can use the Thunder Elegy, or you can use the Phoenix Eye. It both works here, or you can even use the Breath of Gigantis. I personally prefer using it here, though I also could be using this Vigil of the Sanctus. Mine is only level 2, but these are the 2 options here. Breath of Gigantis is better for your alliance, Visage is better for yourself, I guess. And then in my case, I'm putting this little pet, not my best seraphic. This is not my best march. I don't really bring it that often because I use infantry, but you know, I'm going to be maxing Mu. I'm working on her right now, and this is one of the options. It does earn really good merit, but I'm really liking this Thundelyn Maggrat, and I am going to be playing a lot around with other deputies and other things you can do here, depending on what I'm using. But personally, so far, this has been my best top 5 performing marches in terms of merit, and this is kind of what I've been doing. Here's like an idea from my last KVK. Let me move my face away here and here. So this is the typical 5 march that I would run at the end of the season. Obviously, Young Grimara is insane. I had some decent report always from Bert Tohar. As you can see, my Liliya Velen also is really high, and this Thundelyn with Maggrat, I mean, it's almost as high as this one, right? Like, it's still 85,000 is incredible. And even this one, this Moo, this was like a 5-1, 5-1 kind of Moo, like really nowhere near to being awakened, and it's still 66,000. So I mean, it's very decent. I've had another, few reports here, depending on, how good the fights went. But you can see that this Thundelyn Maggrat always compares to the other marches that I have on the field. It's just, it's just really good. I think it works really well. And for my Thundelyn in this situation, I built a very specific talent tree where I get a lot of attack damage stuff, as you can see here. I get a little bit of movement speed as well. I think I have like, I guess I have like 26% here. I'm not a big speed sink kind of guy when we're fighting in cities and stuff like that. And I got this one because it dispels Rage Kill, which is what Kuma has. It does. It's only once every 20 seconds though, so I don't really think it's that good. But you do get the healing here, which is boosted by Thundelyn's skill. But I would probably go for this, or I could even move things around. I'm just testing it out, but this is what I got the 80,000 and the 50-something thousand merit reports with. I'm trying to go with some attack damage and some very different kind of things you would see, defense break and stuff like that, because I mean, there's no skill damage. I mean, there is skill damage from Thundelyn, but not from Maggrat. So I'm trying to see if I'm boosting the attack damage of the march, it benefits both and mostly Maggrat. So things to keep in mind, things to see when you're testing out. So yeah, let me know what you think about this in the comments, guys, and stay tuned for more videos coming very shortly.